Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to talk about this movie actually, because I'd been watching a bunch of Phantom of the Opera stuff. I was like getting it back into it, and I did some reviews on it for the 2004 movie, and then it was the stage musical, the Andrew Lloyd Webber one specifically, because there's multiple Phantom of the Opera musicals, and then I'd watched because that was the 25th anniversary one, and then I watched the Charles Dance Phantom movie from 1990, and then I took a break from Phantom stuff for a while, not just because it was kind of like going round and round in my head and stuff, but also I wanted the chance to watch some other things, so I watched some like silent movies and stuff, watched Nosferatu, Dracula. I don't really watch like silent movies or anything, but it was kind of cool because so far I've seen 3. This is my 3rd. I've one of those, I'd watched on Tubi, what was it, Dracula, Nosferatu. I watched, and I think that was the one I watched on YouTube where it had like a different soundtrack or something. One of those I watched on Tubi, and one of those I watched on YouTube with some kind of like added soundtrack or whatever, where it was like the Type O negative. I think that was for Nosferatu. Anyway, and then Phantom of the Opera, I went back on Tubi. So I didn't realize this until I was done. I scrolled past to like look at the actors and stuff on Tubi. It has this little like, you may also like section. And I saw the Phantom of the Opera was listed there again. So there's actually 2 versions of this movie that are on Hulu. I don't know how many versions of the movie there are in general. It's kind of interesting. I was kind of scrolling through them both. It looks like it's exactly the same film, both from 1925 and everything, with Lon Chaney as the Phantom. The only difference is the one that I did not watch is entirely in black and white. And the one that I did watch was really interesting, where it's like, it's different colors. I feel like that sounds kind of weird. Let me try my best to explain. It's like, with black and white, everything's like, it's in grayscale and stuff, basically. And it's like that, but if you, instead of having those colors be like a range of grays and stuff, ranging from black and white, instead if it was just one color, like let's say purple or something, and then everything is like these different shades of purple. That's pretty much how this version works, except instead of just purple, there's like 4 different other colors for some reason. So I don't specifically know what version of this is, where it's like multiple different colors, because if you look on Tubi, these are both just listed as the Phantom of the Opera. Actually, I think one of them is listed as the Phantom of the Opera movie. Now that no, they're both listed as the Phantom of the Opera and everything. The only difference on here is that they have different movie posters, because the one that I watched, I made sure to find, I'm pretty sure this is like oh no, this is a different poster. Shit. Well, it's the same art style, so there's that, because the one that I watched, the Phantom is like in the water. They're both based on like scenes in the actual movie where the Phantom's in the water and he's like stalking a guy. And then the version I didn't watch just has this, it's kind of a weird picture. I actually kind of hate it, where it's the Phantom and then there's like a Photoshop giant hand in front of him holding a bloody knife. And it's like surrounded by roses. It looks really silly. I don't like it. But this poster that I did find is in the same art style as the other one, for the one that I like watched and everything. And this is also a scene, but it looks way cooler in the movie. But I really like this art style. It looks kind of fun. The 5,000 others I was at first confused about, and then I got to the masquerade scene and I was like, oh, okay, I see why there's like a billion extras in this movie. It's crazy like how many other people there are in this movie. I didn't really know any of the actors in this. I've known, Lon Chaney plays the Phantom of the Opera. Like, I've known that for years and for this specific movie. And unfortunately, I had seen his face before. Not there's like one specific shot in the movie where it is like a direct close-up of his face, and I'm glad that's not the thing I'd seen. I think I'd just seen him from like far away or something, so not really quite all the details, because it's at one specific spot where you like really see his face, and it's when he's revealed for the first time, and it's just like, whoa. I'll talk about it in my notes and stuff. But I think this poster's cool. I thought it was just kind of like it's supposed to be a dramatic poster, and then I realized when I was done, I was looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute. This is a scene in the it's supposed to take place on the roof and stuff. The Phantom is supposed to be, not like he's jumping off the building or anything. But yeah, I think it looks cool. But anyway, yeah, Lon Chaney, I think he does a fantastic job as this character. I'll be like especially with the facial expressions and stuff. You can especially notice it like when he's not wearing the mask. The mask does cover like most of his face and everything. And I think the actress that plays Christine, I'm assuming she's the one in here named Mary. She does a really great job too. She plays Christine in a way where she's like kind of scared but also sort of innocent, and like at first seems kind of very trusting of the Phantom, but in like kind of a realistic way where she's great at making faces when her character is supposed to look like terrified and everything, or mostly when it's like her expression slowly changes. There's like one specific part of that with that I really liked that I'll talk about later. But I thought she was played very well as well. So back to the color thing, because music and color is, I think, the first thing I have to address before I get into the actual plot and into my notes and stuff. So I mentioned there's more colors than purple, right? I came up with names for them, actually. They're only going to pop up like a little bit in the way I talk. I'm not going to be like, oh, this scene, it's like purple, this scene is orange or whatever. But it's interesting because there's like some sections where the colors are used for like very specific scenes that I feel like really fit to like sort of demonstrate what's happening. I don't know if there's like a meaning for the order of the colors, because they go in like a sort of a certain order but not really, and it's not like it changes color for every scene. Actually, towards the end it does that, but it's for like a specific part where I think it's actually used in a really cool way. But it'll be like the movie is pink for a while, and then it's yellow for a while, and then it's like black and white for a while. Oh yeah, there's just a part of it that's just straight up like the middle is just in black and white, and for some reason visually it's like in way better quality than like everything else. It's like crystal clear compared to like I think because when it's the other colors, when it's like purple or whatever, it gets really hard. It's like harder to see the details than if it was just in black and white, and the darker the color is on screen, like purple or pink or something, then the harder it is to see. Okay, so the colors are purple, dark pink, I ended up calling it rose, piss yellow, regular black and white, and then actual black and white, and then Virtual Boy red. I hope those are good enough descriptions to imagine the colors. And when I say Virtual Boy red specifically, I mean it. It's kind of terrifying, actually. It was like a jump scare because it happens at like one specific part of the movie and it fits for the scene of what's supposed to be happening. But oh man, I looked at it and I'm like, why did this movie turn into the Virtual Boy? So the music, I am so happy to talk about the music. Okay, so the last time I watched a silent movie on Tubi, I believe it was Dracula, and I explained my problem I have with Tubi and how they do music for silent films, and it was the same problem I had with Metropolis as well, where it's like 5 minutes of the same little song and it repeats for the entire movie, and it's kind of the worst. This movie does not have that problem. It's awesome, actually. If anything, it made me confused if it was a silent movie in the first place, because it has its own soundtrack, and I thought, oh my gosh, does the movie like actually have sound? Is it not actually a silent film? It is a silent film. They don't, you know, the actors don't verbally talk. You can't, this is not a talkie. There's still the dialogue on screen. However, there is music in this, and it doesn't sound like it's music that was like added in later or like just put over the movie. It sounds like it's like actually part of the movie, especially because there's one part where the Phantom is playing the organ and you actually like hear the organ and everything. I feel like that's part of it. I don't understand how that works personally, if it was actually added in, you know, I can't tell, because there's actually like a ton of tracks and it's just changing constantly depending on like the scenes and stuff. But that was awesome. That felt wonderful. I literally just wrote the word huzzah in my notes of not having the same 5-minute Tubi song. So that was cool. That helped me not only pay attention, but the music fits really well with everything. It's a lot of it, it'll go from being like very gentle and kind of romantic sounding to sometimes it's like a march. It's just all kinds of things. The soundtrack's beautiful, honestly. It's like haunting, and even the in-universe operas in this movie, because there's, you know, like 3 of them in the story, they have their own music. I actually want to let me look it up, because I'm saying the thing I always say of I want to listen to the soundtrack. The soundtrack of this movie is so good, and then I forget to look up the soundtrack. I'm not on Spotify right now, but let me just take a quick peek. Let's see. I want to just know if it's on here. Phantom of the Opera soundtrack, 1925. Let's see what pops up. Okay, there's different things that are popping up. Apparently, oh hey, Phantom Retrospective was the channel where I found the 1990 movie. Sweet. Okay, apparently if you look it up, there's like a bunch of different things, different versions or something with like different people's scores. Like there's one by some guy named Ed Bassesi. There's another one where it just says Carl Davis score. There's another one where it says reconstructed with original score. So I'm assuming these are the movie. Okay, these are just like the whole movie but with the score in them, but I can't see one where it's like just the music itself. Unfortunately, I don't know what version of the movie I watched on Tubi, so I don't know which score this is, which is a total bummer because it was so cool. And there's specific tracks I wanted to talk about. I don't even know what they're called or anything. But yeah, I don't know which score it is. I don't know how different they are. So that's kind of a bummer, unfortunately. But I mean, if you watch this on Tubi and you find, because I think it's only just the 2 versions that are on here, and you find the one I'm talking about with the different colors and watch it, if anyone can let me know which score it's supposed to be, or like who it's by, that would be great. I don't know how to search for this because I don't know which version this is. But yeah, the music's great. I'll talk about it for like specific scenes and stuff. I have it in my notes. Okay, I'm gonna start with the notes now. I also don't have to worry about volume. I just learned this like 2 days ago, apparently, that my folks that sleep on the other end of the house apparently can't hear me at all at night when I talk, so I'm really glad about that, because there's some things in this movie I'm gonna go like absolutely nuts for, and it's always boring for me when I record too late and then I have to like try to keep my voice down. I'm not ever like screaming or anything, thankfully. Okay, so I don't know where this movie's shot. I also have to Google that as well. But it looks like it's at like an actual opera house and everything. It looks beautiful, honestly, especially the chandelier. Let me see if I can find it. It's like one of the first shots in the movie, actually. Wait, that's not it. I still have the tab on Tubi open so I can like scroll through and such. But yeah, the opera house is really fancy. There's like all of these like sculptures of things and candles and stuff, and just all these little like decorations and staircases and whatever. It's really cool. All the rooms look so freaking huge and everything, especially there's like this main room where the like the masquerade scene and those kind of things would play. Okay, I found a shot of the chandelier. Let me, damn it, moved. Hold on, wait. Where is it? I'm at the section of the movie towards the beginning where it's like piss yellow still. I don't know what else to call that shade of yellow. I'm like saying that as a joke, but also as a okay, there's the chandelier. It has like a billion different little like bulbs on it and just fancy things. This thing is immaculate. And it does actually fall in this movie. It's really cool. But yeah, just the location of everything looks great. All the people look so tiny inside of this. I'll be talking more about just different like location things in this as I go. So we get to see the ballet first. And it's like an actual ballet, which I find kind of interesting. Because I still haven't read the original novel yet, by the way. I still want to. So my only frames of reference with this are like mostly like the not 19, I was gonna say the 1990 movie. No, I'm thinking about like the stage musical and stuff. Or I guess the 1990 movie would be the closest, because that one's also not a musical. This isn't a musical either. But yeah, there's a ballet. There's like this really gentle music for it I liked, and I like the dancers' ballerina costumes as well. They look like very poofy and such. And the text cards, or I don't know what they're officially called in silent movies, whenever it's like a black screen and then the text pops up for like the dialogue or other things. I really like how they work here. There's like way more of them than like the last couple silent movies I'd watched, where they aren't just for dialogue, like that's what I assumed they were for, but they're actually descriptions of like things that are happening and whatever, almost as if like you were reading a book and stuff. Like during the ballet, there's one that pops up that says something of like, oh, at the same time there's a deal for the opera house that's happening, of like it gaining the new owners and everything. What was I going to say about that? I don't remember. I had a thought and it's gone. So something cool with the character the Phantom is that we actually do get to see him early on just like running around the opera house doing things. Like actually within like the first like 5 minutes or so, basically we get to see him, because our characters we're sort of following along at the beginning aren't actually the Phantom or Christine or even like Raoul. It's the two new owners for the opera house who don't really have like dialogue or anything. They're kind of just like really like side characters. We mostly only see them at the beginning, and then they don't really pop up in the movie again, but they're like exploring the opera house and learning about it, and I think that's pretty cool, where we even actually get to see the Phantom just chilling in box 5. It's kind of interesting. The owners like walk in and they're behind him, and I mean they don't know who he is, they just think that he's someone there, and then they leave and then they walk back in and then he's just gone. But I guess even at that point he'd probably be aware of them, because I always noticed that with like the movies and the musicals and stuff, where you never really ever like actually see him up there. It's always just a thing of like, hey, leave box 5 empty. The ballerinas are also interesting. Again, they're like characters that are just kind of really there at the beginning, and that's mostly about it. But the way they like kind of treat the Phantom is sort of interesting, where they know about him already, they're scared of him, but they don't know what he looks like. But they talk about it in a way where they're not really like making fun of him or anything. It's more of like they're just curious about him. They know he exists and they assume that he's like real and everything. There's this one part before that happens when they talk to one of the characters, because you still get the scene of Joseph Bouquet describing the Phantom and the ballerinas listening, kind of like with the musical. But like right before that happens, there's this one part I thought was kind of interesting, where after their performance they there's this one part they like run inside of this giant, I don't know if it's like just a big prop the opera has, but they run inside of this like giant monster mouth thing, and it only appears in like this one scene, and that's kind of about it. No, okay, it is a prop. It doesn't really like lead anywhere. I think they see a shadow of the Phantom and a door closing, and they all like start freaking out and stuff. But that prop looks really cool. Like there's not really a reason for it to be there, but it's kind of a cool framing of like seeing the shadow of the Phantom and stuff. Like he's inside of this monster sort of. But anyway, they get the description about the Phantom, about how he doesn't have a nose and his skin being like yellow as parchment and stuff, which is usually the description I hear in like most versions. I think it might also be from the novel as well. And it's interesting because like, man, depending on the version of the different movies you watch, that description can be like completely accurate or so off the mark. And it's kind of funny when you know, like when you're watching the movie, like if you've seen it already, like what the Phantom looks like, so you know. It's like I feel like I kind of interpret it differently. Like when I originally watched the 2004 film, and that was like my first time watching anything with the Phantom of the Opera, I had just assumed like, okay, there's no way the Phantom probably looks like that, and this is just someone who is like either making up a story to scare the ballerinas about like the Phantom's appearance, or just hearing like rumors, or maybe it's just like exaggerations of what people like think he looks like. But then with this one, it's an interesting scene where actually I think this is the version of, in terms of like the Phantom makeup and stuff from the movies I've watched, that seems to resemble that description the closest. But the scene isn't really portrayed as like comedic or anything of these wild tales, and Joseph doesn't get interrupted by a character being like, nope, that's the wrong description, you shouldn't make fun of ghosts or anything. The scene's played out like completely serious, and the ballerinas are also taking this description very seriously. They look kind of scared and stuff. But I like that scene of kind of wondering about the Phantom's identity and what he looks like, and the supposed rumors of his face it's a scene that's placed at the beginning rather than like with the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, for example, of it being placed kind of like in the middle, I think, where it sets up sort of like the mystery of the Phantom and the fact that he exists and whatever. This is like the first time you hear about him in the movie, and just kind of having that set up from the start. So there's some characters in here that I'm also like not really used to. I don't know if they're like from the novel as well. Like Carlotta's an interesting character, where in the musicals and stuff she's like a major character who has like a bunch of dialogue and stuff and is like an active threat and everything, but she only has like I think one scene or so, and she's only even kind of relevant for maybe like the first like 20 minutes to half an hour, and then she's never seen or mentioned again except for like one part. She's like kind of offhand mentioned, but she has a mother in this, and the mother has more screen time than her, and the mother is like just as much of a diva and stuff, and it's basically like she's getting these letters from the Phantom that are supposed to be addressed to Carlotta of like, hey, make sure your daughter doesn't sing, and all of that. I like that we actually get to see the handwritten notes from the Phantom. We get like a lot of those within like the first half an hour of this or so. I like that he actually signs his name in these notes to like Carlotta or the new managers and stuff as specifically the Phantom and not something like Opera Ghost. And I'll be talking about that more later, of like the Phantom, in a sense, it's like it's almost like a character that Eric puts on. It's kind of interesting in this movie. But anyway, Christine ends up getting introduced like 13 minutes into this. It's kind of crazy. And like before she's even on screen, she's mentioned by name in the in one of the notes, saying that like, Carlotta ended up being ill mysteriously and Christine has to sing in her place. Or no, it's on like a text card, not one of the handwritten notes. And then it's kind of interesting when we actually get to see Christine like on screen for the first time. She's in the middle of performing, because she's supposed to be Carlotta's understudy, and then she's on stage and she's being taken up and away by a person that's dressed like an angel. Like, the Phantom in this is never referred to as like the angel of music or anything, kind of like with the musicals, but I feel like that symbolism, especially in this little scene, is like kind of a reference to that in a sense. Like, it's like the Phantom is still filling that kind of role a little bit, but he's more so referred to as like Christine's master, and kind of how he refers to himself rather than some kind of title like the Angel of Music. There's also no storyline or anything about like her father and stuff like with the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. Let's see, another new character. Raoul ends up having a brother. I don't remember if the brother's ever listed by... No, I think he's listed by name in the opening credits. Because that's what's nice with this being an older movie, is I can just go to the opening credits and everyone's name is listed on here. I think his name is Philip. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Carlotta's mother doesn't have a name. She's literally just listed as Carlotta's mother. But yeah. Raoul has a brother. I kind of forgot about him, to be honest. Like, I mentioned that there was a poster, like the one for the movie I watched, where there's a guy in a boat and the Phantom's following him. I'm pretty sure that's Raoul's brother. And that's like one of the only relevant scenes I really remember him in. Like, he shows up to try to rescue Christine along with Raoul and this police character at the end, when everyone's like running around in the Phantom's lair and stuff. But I don't really remember him having much like plot relevancy or anything. I'm just mentioning him because he's like a character that's in this. What else? I think Christine and Raoul, from the way they're kind of depicted at the beginning, are supposed to like already be lovers, or it definitely gives that vibe, where Raoul is kind of like warned about the Phantom, and he's like kind of cocky about it and being like, oh, nothing will get in the way of my love with Christine or whatever. But she does seem more affectionate with him even from the beginning. Like, when she's finished with her performance, he's like waiting for her in her dressing room, and she's so happy to see him, and he lifts her up into this hug and she kisses him. It's really cute. But it gives this vibe of like maybe they're already dating, because then he mentions to her of like, oh, let's get married, and then she tells him no, that she won't leave the opera, because she already knows about like the Phantom at this point. I don't know if it's because she doesn't want to leave him behind, or she doesn't want to leave behind her career. But I do like with Christine in this movie, she's like very focused on her career and stuff more than like romance things, really. I think that's kind of interesting. What else? And then we get, oh yeah, the first time that the Phantom talks to Christine. I think it's interesting, and it makes me wish that this movie was a talkie rather than being a silent film, because the Phantom is described by the narration in the text thing. Oh, it's interesting that like it stays on screen for so long, the text, by the way, and like people's dialogue. Anytime there's like a title card, it stays on screen for so long, enough so you can read it, of course, but I can scroll through the movie and I can, it'll show like an image of where you're scrolling and stuff, and I can actually just scroll through and just directly read it. I think that's kind of nice. But the Phantom's described as having the voice of an angel, and I find that interesting. It does make me wish again like I could hear it, but I'm so used to him described as like a ghost. I never thought of like his voice was supposed to sound angelic. I guess that's like the original intent, especially like when I think about like the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, for example, where it's like when I watched the stage version of it, the 25th anniversary recording, I remember the Phantom, I mean, it's in the 2004 movie too, where he's supposed to sound kind of ghostly, bit like almost breathy, really, of sounding like it's this voice that's coming from like very far away, which I think is really cool. But having the voice of an angel description here makes me think, instead of sounding ghostly, or maybe it could be another way of sounding ghostly, as in like sounding almost like this supernatural, far away sort of being, you know, because he's still talking to Christine from a distance, but it's making me think like, oh, does he just have like a naturally beautiful voice? Because there is singing in this. There's singing that's part of the plot. Like, Christine does have to get up there and sing and stuff. You know, and sadly you don't get to hear any of it. It kind of brings down the opera sections, like when any of the times they're putting on the opera, when it's stuff that has to do with singing and not any of the dancing, because you don't get to hear any of it. But the Phantom doesn't get to sing or anything. He just plays the organ. There is a violin in the background in his lair, which I thought was cool. I was hoping the entire movie that he would just pick it up and play it, but he only ever plays his organ. It's kind of a bummer. What else? He has a lot of body language with his hands. Just throughout the movie in general, I think it's like a strength. But especially towards the beginning, you see a lot of stuff with his hands. You see a lot of his stuff with his hands because the rest of him will be off screen or something. So it's to show, like, you know, he's physically there, he exists, his like presence and stuff, but without actually seeing his face or his body. You don't get to actually see any of that until he meets Christine for the first time and she goes through the mirror and is trying to find him and stuff. But what I like that they do instead is stuff like seeing the phantom shadow on the wall. It'll cut when they're talking between like Christine in the room, and then you'll see a wall in like a completely different room, but the shadow, the phantom's shadow is against it, where you just see like his silhouette. And he's just standing there. It's kind of funny. He's acting as if he's like in the same room talking to Christine, with the way he's moving his hands and stuff. I think it's kind of cool. So it kind of represents like him staying in the shadows and stuff to talk to her. Like he stays hid. I think that's a cool way to do it, where, you know, there's no dialogue or any, like, I mean, there's no, you know, verbal dialogue. You can't hear the actors, so it's not like we can, you know, how normally it's like, if you're watching one of the other movies, the camera would just be focused and stay in the room where like Christine is, and you would just be able to like hear the Phantom's voice talking to her or whatever. But you know, here they can't do that. Like, even if they had the title card on screen, it's never written, you know, in these kind of movies as like character name, you know, like on a movie script where it's like character name and then their dialogue. You wouldn't have any indication that he would be talking, but you still need to show like he's hidden and he's there and he's talking to her because it's important to the plot. So I think that's pretty creative, actually, of getting it so that you see his shadow on the wall where you know it's him. I mean, at that point in the story, you don't know it's like him, but it's just so you know that he's like there talking to Christine. The way they like cut between the shots and stuff for that scene, I think, is really cool. What else? There's a line he says to her about wanting to meet soon, and he says, "The spirit will take form and command your love." I thought that was a pretty cool line, and I almost feel kind of angry about Christine and feel a little bad for the Phantom in that towards the beginning, it's really just when she's with him up until the point where she like leaves his lair for the first time after he takes her there. She sounds so on board with all his stuff and like she actually cares about him, and then as soon as she's back with Raoul and back in the opera house, she seems like terrified of the Phantom, but more importantly, she just refers to him exclusively when talking to Raoul as like he's a monster and stuff, and she just suddenly wants like nothing to do with him. There's never like a point, like when I think about some of the other movies I've seen, where she shows at least like okay, she's not in love with him, and that's like fine, of course. he wouldn't be a good choice as a love interest and everything, but she never really seems to show him sympathy in this, like, at all. Like when she leaves his lair for the first time, it kind of feels like she doesn't really like care about him anymore. So it kind of makes these scenes early on like a bit harder to watch, like once you know that, like, if you're rewatching it, like now that I'm reflecting on it and stuff, where it's like it sounds like she's kind of faking it. Well, I don't think at this point, I think, you know, she still refers to him as like her master, and it sounds like she does genuinely want to meet him and everything. I think it's like once she ends up in his lair and she's trying to beg him to let her go, I think at that point she's kind of pretending, and then from there she's like kind of scared of him and stuff, because she seems really enthusiastic to meet him and everything. There's a part where Eric has to deliver a note to the new opera house owners, and it's kind of a funny scene where you see this cabinet like in their office, and the door opens, and Eric's hand is just there. I think he's like wearing a glove or something though, and he's holding onto an envelope, and it's just one-handed, but the way he like just kind of flings it over and it lands on the desk, and he just flings it as if it's like nothing, you know. I find that kind of funny, because with everything else and like his fancy handwriting and everything, it's like was it in cursive actually? I don't remember. Yeah, it's in cursive. I just saw it. I'm like moving around the mouse way too fast. Yeah, it's in like cursive. It's really like legible and everything. You know, he puts so much care into the letters, and then he just kind of flings it over. Is funny to me. And the two owners, they're never like afraid of him or anything. I find that funny. I mean, I think usually they're not. They usually see his messages as like a joke. But what I find interesting with these two specifically in this is that they're kind of just more bewildered. If anything, they're just kind of more confused of like, where are these notes coming from and whatever, like after reading them. I find it kind of funny. But what is interesting is like, in some of the other movies, it's mentioned, you know, when it's like the change of owners of, hey, there's like a phantom down there. He requires a very specific, really high salary, even though he doesn't supposedly do anything. And, you know, the owners usually laugh it off. That's never a thing that's mentioned in this or in any of the notes by the phantom. So it's kind of interesting because there's one specific room in his lair I'm going to talk about later that's like really extravagant, and I was wondering like how the hell is he able to afford that, unless it's just kind of like the 1990 movie where everything's just like props that he's stolen down that have been like in the opera house or whatever. It's kind of interesting to think about. I appreciate the effort that went in for the sections of the movie that are like the characters are putting on the opera. There's these close-ups during those, especially when Christine is performing, and it looks like it's an actual old movie rather than like an in-universe set. I don't really know how to explain it. I feel like I could show like shots of it or something. But I think that's really cool, actually. It really makes me feel like in those little scenes, like you're actually, you know, like watching it and stuff. But those are done pretty well. It's funny, Christine, where is it? Oh yeah, even from the beginning, she's sending notes to Raoul saying, like, we must never see each other again. You know, it's like for his own safety and stuff, and those end up continuing a bit. Okay, and then we actually get the scene where the chandelier crashes, and I know I'm not sounding as energetic a little bit. It's kind of a bummer right now. It's like 11:30, and I'm getting to one of the parts that's really good, but I'm like physically tired, and I can feel the enthusiasm leaving me, and I'm just like, damn it, because these are the parts I want to be the most energetic about, but I just do not physically have the energy for that right now. But I hope I'm trying really hard to have my enthusiasm come across. But yeah, the Phantom bringing down the chandelier is really cool. And just the way it's shot, I really like it. Where we see the we see the Phantom silhouette, and it's facing the camera, and there's words on the screen, like one of the text cards, except this isn't really like a text card. It's more of like the text is over the silhouette of the Phantom. It's when the movie's like rose colored. It's like it's on its own screen, and then the text says, "Behold, she is singing to bring down the chandelier." And I really like that, rather than having it like they could have split it up into like two things of like the silhouette of the Phantom and then switching to the text card and having that text. But the fact they have the text over the Phantom, it gives this impression as if he's like yelling it out to the in-universe opera audience, but I feel like it kind of shows his power. It like makes him feel like more of a threat of seeing those words on there, but then having that sort of image of him in the background. And it doesn't stop the action or anything. It keeps things going, where it's like the text is there, you read it, but he's still doing the movements and stuff of like pulling the lever and whatever to release the chandelier, because you're getting to this big moment. This is the big hype moment of the Phantom of the Opera, of the chandelier falling and stuff, and you got to build to that, and you can't just like stop the action of that just to give the Phantom his dialogue, so I appreciate they made that choice. I thought that was a good choice. And then you have the chandelier falling, and I like that before it happens, like even when it's having that Phantom dialogue, the lights in the opera house are just flashing a bit, and I don't think I really noticed that in the other movies. I think it's usually like it like suddenly shakes a bit and then falls, if I remember correctly. But here I like the detail of the lights flashing, because it shows like before you even know it's going to crash or anything about it is brought up, or like whatever the Phantom's doing, it's showing like, hey, something's not right here. Something, might be wrong with the chandelier. So I think those two especially are really cool details. The chandelier falling, I wish, I understand with the time period this was made, why it's the way it is. I just wish it was slower. Okay, so the way they do it is the chandelier, it like wobbles a little bit, and then the next shot is it falling. And I mentioned with Nosferatu and Dracula, the thing I've noticed with silent movies is whenever it's either like a repetition of an action, like someone having to stack a bunch of boxes or whatever, or if it's anything where it's an action scene, like a carriage is moving and they don't want it to go really slow, they have it where it's like the footage is like sped up within the movie. They do that for the chandelier when it's like actually falling. I feel like it's probably a safety thing, because then the next shot is that it's on the chairs, because I'm assuming if it like actually fell, it would probably like injure people. But then if they did it this way, I can imagine they have it where it's falling and then it's on the ground, like it's not like hurting anybody. But man, seeing the shot of the chandelier on the chairs and everyone's running away from it and stuff, and it's freaking huge, it's crazy. But yeah, that scene and like the build up to it is done pretty well. I'm like even looking at the chandelier right now when it's the shot where it's on the chairs after it's fallen and there's people around it. The people look so tiny. The chandelier is actually so large it takes up like almost the entire screen basically, and then it's that sped up part again where all of these people, again, there's probably like a bajillion extras in this. Yeah, it's mentioned on the poster, it says like in 5,000 hours. That's, I don't know how many extras movies normally have, but this is like crazy. Like the amount of people they fit in this theater and everything for this movie. But it's great because it makes scenes of like you get to see it further of everyone just running out and the room is packed and people are panicking and running down all these stairs. It just makes it feel so real, honestly. I really like that. And I'm glad that the chandelier seemed like it was real as well. I thought it was going to be like some kind of prop or whatever. And that's interesting. There's one more character I forgot to mention. I'm going to spoil his identity right now, though, because I'm going to forget about it later. There's this guy who's part of the secret police. He knows things about the Phantom because he's been, like, kind of studying him secretly for a while. But his character is interesting, and this is, like, the first time he appears, I think, is when everyone's leaving, where he just seems kind of suspicious, where he keeps showing up in places where it's like he's like fleeing or whatever, or just kind of sneaking around. Even the ballerinas notice him at first, and I feel like it's done where you kind of assume like, oh, maybe this guy's the Phantom of the Opera, you know, except that he's not. And his identity of being the secret police is only revealed later anyway, and only I think because Raoul asks like who this guy is or whatever. And I find that interesting that they wait so long for that reveal, especially because at that point it's like you've already met the Phantom and you know who he is and how to identify him, and you've already seen his face. So I feel like at that point you don't really need to hide this guy's identity anymore. But yeah, he ends up like running away and stuff. He only appears a few times throughout the movie, but then by the end he's actually the one that accompanies Raoul to go into the Phantom's lair and stuff. At first I wasn't sure about his character because I've heard in the novel there's a character that's called the Persian, I think, who kind of warns things about the Phantom and seems to like know stuff. I don't know if I'm like completely getting that right. And there's sort of a similar character in like the musicals and stuff, like the Andrew Lloyd Webber one of like Madame Giry, who like knows things about the Phantom and like warns people, and the whole like keep your hand at the level of your eyes thing. Oh yeah, that's a thing that's in this one too. And they like actually explain it, because the musical was annoying to me of like the just keep the hand at your level of your eyes, and I was always like, what the heck does that mean? Like I assumed it was so like the Phantom can't can't like sneak attack you and stuff, but they do actually explain it on a text card here, and I was right about that. I'm glad of like, so that way the noose doesn't get you. But yeah, that's that character pretty much. He doesn't really get like too much dialogue actually, but this is like the scene where he first appears, I believe, where everyone's like running out and he's kind of just wandering around. He wears a fez and a cape. That's kind of like the easiest way to identify him, but he just also comes off as suspicious because his eyes are interesting, where they always look really wide. He always looks kind of like he's on alert and such. Okay, what else? Oh, I forgot about the Phantom when he's like running around and stuff as like a silhouette mostly. I think it's kind of interesting where he has his cape and his hat, but that's how you're instantly able to recognize him. And he just mostly keeps appearing as like shadows. I love that he has his hat. I love like any version of these where he has the hat, because with the musicals and stuff, sometimes he has it, sometimes he doesn't. Really bothered me with the 2004 musical once I like had watched some of the other movies and stuff where the Phantom doesn't have a hat at all, because I just think the look of the hat with the cloak cape, it's so iconic, and it really makes his silhouette and design and everything just look it just really ties everything together, but just makes him look more mysterious. If anything, I feel like it fits with the whole thing of like he wears the mask to hide his face, you know, because of the way his face looks like, but also just his outfit. It gives him like the sort of gentlemanly appearance of like the hat, the cape. Sometimes he has like a cane or whatever. Or actually, no, I think that's just for the Red Death costume. But it gives this like sort of like gentlemanly appearance, but also it's like another way to hide himself. You know, he hides himself in like the cloak and the hat covering like most of his head and stuff. If anything, with the hat, I actually... Well, he doesn't wear a wig in this. He has hair, so he doesn't need like a wig. Like normally he like hides his what remains of his hair because he's supposed to be really old. Let's see. Let me. Oof, it's actually almost midnight. This always happens where it takes me like 3 hours to watch a movie because I'm writing notes, and then it takes me forever to read like any of the notes. I actually typed this on Google Docs. Normally I write this through my phone, but it's actually making things worse where it's all of the text looks the same. It's all just these... I mean, I press enter between like every time I'm done with a note, so it's not just like a giant block of text. Okay, and then we get the Phantom meeting Christine for the first time, and that was also a scene that I really liked, where it starts off with Christine in her dressing room after the chandelier's fallen and everything, and the Phantom tells her that he's come for her in a walk towards the mirror. And this is the part I mentioned where I said like the facial expressions that the actress has are really good playing this character, where Christine's face, she goes from looking kind of a little frazzled, which makes sense. The chandelier just fell and everything. That's crazy. And then her face like slowly changes to a smile. Like she seems so happy to finally be able to meet the Phantom. And the mirror's pretty cool. It's like very simple, where it's just a mirror that's able to swing open like a secret door. Basically it might as well be a secret door with like a mirror on the outside. And it's kind of funny because like it opens for her and Christine goes through, and Roel is on the outside the door to the dressing room listening in and whatever, and he supposedly hears the Phantom and goes inside, and then the door closes before he can get in there, and then it just refuses to open for him. I find that kind of funny, but it's kind of nice. Christine, she just looks so fascinated and excited to be under the opera house, and I love the part when she gets approached by the Phantom. I had to like pause it for a bit just to like hold on, let me just pause. I feel like I kind of need to let the yawns out for a minute. Oh yeah, this is probably gonna be like 2 hours. I'm still at the beginning. I'm like this is like the point in the movie where it's half an hour in, by the way. This is gonna be like a 2 hour review, my bad, but this is such a good movie that I don't care. But yeah, Christine gets approached by the Phantom, and the music at that point, there's actually harps added in there. It's very gentle and sweet sounding, and his hands... by the way, I feel like no matter what version of the Phantom of the Opera I'm watching, whether it's a musical or a movie, I always really like the Phantom's body language, especially the hands. Just the way the actors playing the Phantom always seem to know what to do with the hand movements, and really just conveys so much with the character, where the Phantom in general tries to be so like gentle with Christine and stuff, and how he goes to touch her. I find it really interesting. Like here, his hand movements are like very slow and kind of flowy, especially she's like standing and staring at something or just kind of looking around, and the Phantom is behind her and you don't really see him. Like all of him is off screen except for his hand, and you see it reaches over very slowly to touch her, and then he hesitates and his fingers actually pull back towards his hand a little bit, and then he goes and decides to just like rest like a couple of his fingers on her shoulder, and then I don't know why it takes her forever to turn around. She like slowly turns her head around. It reminds me of like an owl or something. And it's only when she's finally turned around to look at him that she removes her hand, and then it switches to the next shot where you actually get to see the Phantom. And his mask is interesting. I want to talk about that. But she actually freaks out seeing his mask. I think it's the mask specifically, actually, even though it's actually not really like scary or anything. And then he tries to like be more gentle with his movements and not to scare her. He's like kind of trying to calm her down and being like, hey, it's me. He does this little motion where he almost like kind of gestures to himself. Anyway, let's talk about the mask. So half an hour in, we finally get to see the Phantom on screen. His hat's kind of interesting. I remember the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, well, if I remember it correctly, he has this hat that has this like really big brim that I like, but here the hat's it has like a smaller brim. It's actually this like fedora style hat, but he dresses like pretty normally. He has like his cape and then this big tie ribbon thing thing and a coat. It's actually an outfit that's like a bit less gothic than I was expecting, even though it is kind of the outfit you see in the other like adaptations and stuff of like the hat and the cloak. But his mask is really interesting. Hold on, I'm gonna go back to a shot of that real quick. In the movie, it's kind of interesting actually. The movie is like pink at the beginning. It's purple only literally 2 times this movie, the title card and then the last 5 minutes of the movie, which sucks because like purple's the hardest color to see on here. But most of the movie is like up till this point I'm describing when Christine meets the Phantom is the piss yellow color, and then once Christine goes inside the mirror and she's officially standing under the opera house and waiting for the Phantom, it changes to rose. I wonder if that's on purpose to match of like, oh, it's supposed to be like sort of, because it is almost treated as like a romantic scene and stuff, with their interaction and with the gentle music and everything. Okay, so his mask is interesting. Where it covers his face up till like the point of his mouth, so like it covers the forehead, the eyes, the nose, and it goes around the side of his face until his ear. I don't know how it stays on. I'm assuming it's like a string or something. I didn't see it on the back of his head, but his mouth isn't visible. With the movie being pink at that point, it was hard for me to tell. It was like harder to see, but there's actually like a piece of cloth or something I think is attached to the mask, but it covers his mouth. There's like one part in the movie when he's talking and you can actually kind of see his teeth from underneath the cloth. It's like a little bit see-through, but most of the time it covers his mouth. I get why it's like that though. Once you see his face, I think you understand. Okay, I guess the yawns are still coming. Sorry about that. But yeah, his mask is interesting where it isn't really shaped around his face. Like when you think of the other mask, it's usually like shaped around the actor's face. And it has its own little nose too that's like sculpted into the mask rather than being like over his nose. There's a reason for that too. And then the eyes and the eyebrows I find the most interesting, where they're actually just directly painted onto the mask instead of having like a hole around the eyes to be able to see, kind of like every other version of the movie masks and stuff. But the eyebrows, they're pointed in a way where they're almost in like a sad sort of position, and the eyes are really stylized where like rather than looking realistic of being like kind of an oval shape, they're like kind of droopy and tired looking is the way they're stylized. And then for some reason, the mask itself has like really large cheek areas, but that's not how his cheeks look. And you can tell looking at like a profile view of the mask on his face, it's the cheek area looks puffy on the mask, so the mask looks like bigger than like the actor's face. I don't really know how to describe it. But the piece of cloth or whatever it is covering the mouth part, I find kind of interesting. You can see it sort of better on like a side view, like a profile view of the Phantom, where there's like this little flappy looking thing that just kind of hangs out. That actually looks like it matches the mask a little bit. It's not the same color or anything, but now that I'm looking at it, it kind of follows the same, like, the way the mask like sticks out and is like over, it's like the solid thing over his face rather than being designed to fit on his face, and the flap kind of follows that like sort of contour shape a little bit. And then, yeah, Christine freaks out at seeing that, and he tells her not to look at the mask. I want to talk about her dress, too. She has, like, multiple dresses. Not as much as, like, the musical or, like, some of the other movies and stuff. It's mainly just this one dress that has this big necklace, and then there's the masquerade scene where she has a different dress. And then I think after that, she's in a different dress. I mean, she has different outfits for the operas as well, but her main dress, or like their first one here, I really like it, where it has a lot of like ruffles and things, but I think it looks good. I like her hairstyle throughout this too. I just noticed she has earrings as well, and they changed throughout the movie. And then in this, when she's like taken by the Phantom and stuff, this specific dress has this like really long cape thing that trails around. I think it's really cool. But yeah, the dress has a lot of ruffles, and it's like, it makes it kind of poofy, but in like an elegant way. And it's kind of interesting where she gives him this sort of like side eye kind of look when he tells her not to look at the mask. And then we actually get her perspective for a second, where the Phantom gets kind of blurry, and then it cuts back to Christine, and she has this kind of sleepy sort of look on her face, kind of hypnotized. I think it's supposed to show that she's sort of being like led on by him a bit, like the sort of hypnotized type of thing. And there's this shot that I really like when Christine is it actually takes a while. They have to like walk down to the lair, and it actually takes like a whole bit, where she has to walk further into the like heading towards the lair. It's like the start of their descent, and there's this, the building has this like curvature as they walk to the bottom, like down these stairs. I think it looks really cool. And then the thing that was crazy to me, what happens next, is there's the freaking horse. Okay, I don't know how many movie adaptations have a horse, but, the first one I'd ever watched, like I've been mentioning, was the 2004 Andrew Lloyd Webber movie, where during the titular song, The Phantom of the Opera, when it all takes place, like when they're going down to the lair for the first time, which is always such a cool scene. I always wondered, I was like, why the hell is there a horse underneath this opera house? How did Eric get it there? And it was always funny watching the horse, because like Christine has to take the time to like climb up there and stuff, and I swear she rides the horse like 3 feet and then has to get off the horse so they can go on the boat. And I was like, why is there a horse here? This feels so silly. There's a horse in this one too. That's where the freaking horse came from. And that's crazy, because I've never seen that in like anything else. Like the main thing in like every version, it seems like, no matter it's like the stage musical or any of the movies, is like they get in the boat and the Phantom has to paddle her across and everything. It's always a cool moment, and that's here too. But this is the only one I've seen besides the 2004 movie with the freaking horse. And I always thought that was just like a random decision, or for the like the aesthetic or whatever. Why the hell not? But no, this is, I guess, where the horse comes from. But here it makes so much more sense, because the thing is, sorry, I have to like compose myself a bit. I'm still thinking about the horse. That was like one of the most shocking things for me in this movie, was just horse. Okay, but Christine faints, and then they get to the horse, and then the Phantom puts her on the horse, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense with the horse. Christine's fainted, the Phantom doesn't have to like carry her or anything. And plus they actually have way more walking to do. It takes them like forever to get to the lair, actually. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about their journey to the lair. The way Christine faints is kind of interesting, where normally it's like she faints and the Phantom has to catch her, but then here it's done in this way where it kind of looks like she's like letting herself fall into his arms. I liked that. There's a shot when they're in the catacombs of these like pointed down pathways where they're going down on the horse, and it's like this sort of zoomed out section, and it has these little like holes or arches or whatever where you can like see the horse as it's passing by. And it's really cool because it's actually not a sped up part of the movie. It goes at like a normal pace, which I was surprised about. Like it lets them actually walk it down. It's like if you rode a horse down one of those like parking garage structures where you like go down a floor and you have to like, you know, the car goes down and then you have to like keep going down to get further into the down to the first floor so you can leave. That's basically this. That is like the best way I can describe it. But if it's like the shot is like if you weren't in the car doing that. It's like if you were standing there and you were just watching someone go down this, and it's like that, but like from a side view. It's not like there's a camera above them or anything. I'm so tired. I'm like trying my best to figure out how to explain this. But yeah, parking garage structure going down a floor is the best way I could describe that. But it looks really cool. And the music in the scene is so pretty, actually, where there's all these like flutes and violins. It's very mysterious sounding. Actually, the flutes remind me of the Charles Dance 1990 movie, where Christine, I think there's like a lot of flutes in that one, now that I think about it. I don't remember if it happens when Christine finally goes to the lair. I remember that one also had very mysterious kind of sounding, almost like whimsical fantasy sounding kind of music in that part. And then the Phantom sends the horse away, and I'm glad he actually leads it. He like leaves Christine for a minute and like has the horse, he kind of gestures the horse to go down this tunnel. He doesn't just like ditch the horse or whatever. And then there's the boat. I always like seeing the boat. The boat's kind of the same way as like the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, where it has like the lantern on the front and the Phantom's paddling it. It's pretty cool. The one thing that bothers me with that part though is Christine's cape thing. She doesn't bundle it up and put it inside of the boat with like the rest of her body. She just leaves it to like hang out and go into the water, and it like trails behind her. And I'm just thinking like, girl, it's getting wet. Why didn't you lift it up and you have this like beautiful dress? Because that would mean, you know, you get out of the water and then you just have this giant piece of fabric that's trailing behind you that's wet. Actually, I don't even think it would be trailing behind her then. I think it would just be sort of behind her. If anything, it would probably absorb the water and then it would get like kind of hefty. Like that just sounds really inconvenient, especially because you have like a ton more walking to do. Like, bro, it's not smart. And this, wait, no, what was I going to say? I'm gonna skip that note, actually. And then they get off the boat and they're there and doors open by themselves like it's magic. That was actually pretty cool. And I always like, you know, the Phantom, like he helps her get off the boat and get off the horse. Very like gentlemanly of him towards Christine. And then the phantoms, I mean, when I refer to his lair, I'm referring to like the whole building in my notes, but I guess technically his lair would be like the part of the catacombs he lives in. I guess I should just refer to it that way, of like his living quarters and stuff as like his lair, and the catacombs is like the catacombs. Okay, I don't have it that way set up as my notes, but I'm gonna like try to remember about that. But his oh my god, I just said it and it just left my brain. I keep wanting to say lair so bad because that's what I'm just used to. It is his lair, his house, whatever. His living quarters. It's basically like a house the way it's set up. I'm used to the musicals where there's just like a shit ton of candles. It's like Fire Hazard City over there, and here he does have some candles, but it's like a normal amount. There's like a candle chandelier thing and like one other candle on the wall, but like that's about it. But it's pretty modest for the most part, except for one specific room I'll talk about. But it's just a small little bed, and there's a violin in the background. Not really any furniture or anything. It's pretty chill, but it's like shaped in a way where it's like an actual room. It's not like a cave or anything crazy. It actually seems pretty nice. He just needs to like go visit IKEA and get some cool furniture. But anyway, he tells her that he brought her down because he loves her, and Christine's like so surprised by it. Specifically, he words it as like he wants to plead for her love. I don't really like the line he says though about like being aroused by your purity. I mean, maybe that has to do with like her innocence and stuff as like a character, and also the fact that she's beautiful, and she is beautiful, but there's just something about that line of like aroused by your purity that seems like kind of icky to me, and I don't know if the intention of that line is supposed to be icky. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's this like big, it's interesting because there's like this big romantic music, but Christine is scared and like he won't let her leave. It's like an interesting contrast. And then we get to see his room, because the room we first get to see when Christine walks in, it's like basically his living room. He doesn't actually sleep in there. And talking about beds, it says a lot about these characters, because it turns out the little bed in the living room, as I'll call it, that is not the Phantom's bed, but that's not also Christine's bed. I don't know if it's like a guest room or something. So the Phantom, and it's actually a really sad scene to me, Christine is like trying to run away, and she goes in the Phantom's room, and it's really tiny, and there's a coffin. It's not like a dead body in there. Actually, the Phantom very casually explains it. He like leans against the wall and is casually just like, yeah, that's where I sleep. It's to remind me of death. And it's like, bro, that's so depressing, you know? Like, he doesn't really have the lines of it as much as like some of the musicals or some of the other I keep wanting to say like some of the other movies, but I've only ever really watched like the 2004 one and the 1990 one, and that's kind of about it. There's like a bunch of really other old like Phantom of the Opera movies from like the no, I've watched Phantom of Paradise. I forgot about that, but that just is like way more modern than the other ones I've seen, so it like throws me off. But yeah, there's lines in other things like in the musicals where he describes himself as this like repulsive, disgusting thing. He actually doesn't really do that here. He's got like an okay amount of self-esteem, except for like this one part really where I guess he just like views himself as like a corpse, basically. Like he kind of deserves to sleep in this coffin and stuff. I find that really sad. And then it's interesting to compare it because there's like a little guest room or whatever. I don't know if it's supposed to be like his room for Christine. When Christine faints, I thought he was going to put her in the little bed, and then he goes into a different room out of the living room, and it's covered in curtains, and it's way more snazzy than like the rest of the building. There's like a super elegant bed. It has this beautiful design on the headboard, and the bottom of it is actually shaped like a boat, which I find kind of funny. It's like extravagant as fuck, honestly. There's like an angel at the end of it that's like holding this veil thing. It's beautiful. He puts her in there as if she's like his sleeping bride. And it's just a really fancy room, but I feel like that says a lot about the characters. I feel like this says a lot about the Phantom specifically, of like how he views himself versus how he views Christine, where he chooses to sleep in a literal coffin in this like little room somewhere, and then Christine gets the super fancy room with the super fancy bed and everything. There's a part where she points at him where she's like, oh, you're actually the Phantom, because she doesn't know who he is. He's just this guy that like kidnapped her. The way she points at him, it's like out of Ace Attorney when they point at stuff. That's how dramatic it gets. It's kind of funny. I love that there's this line he says where, if I shall be saved, it's because your love redeems me. And then there's like this romantic happy music that plays. It sounds like very hopeful. What else? When Christine wakes up in the lair the next morning in her little room, it's only been one night, but then there's also this newspaper article that like announces her disappearance. Like, I get that she's Carlotta's understudy and she had performed the previous night, but I'm thinking, like, why do they care? Because this isn't one of those movies where, like, the owners talk about Christine's performance or really anything about... I don't think they ever mention Christine, actually. Like, no one ever comments on, like, how she keeps starring in things and whatever. I mean, there is the notes. They are aware of it, of, like... you know, she has to replace Carlotta and stuff, and that like keeps happening, but it's never really like addressed in the dialogue itself. I also thought it was cute when Christine wakes up in the morning, the Phantom has laid out like 5 pairs of like really fancy shoes for her to pick when she gets up. That's adorable. But then she doesn't take any of them. And then there's like a dress and a veil that's left for her. I'm assuming it's like a wedding dress type thing. It didn't really look like a wedding dress, but like this portion of the movie is, what color is it? Let me see. That actually, the colors do help with, you know, as I'm going through this. Oh, okay, that's when the movie goes back to being piss yellow. Damn. It matters because it determines how well I can see the screen and how many details and stuff. What I like with this movie as well, another detail, is the Phantom leaves a note in her room, and this is the first time he's actually referred to by name in this as well, where it says that she isn't in any danger as long as she doesn't touch his mask. So I'm glad he's like stating his boundaries from the start with this, because I feel like in other versions of the movies and stuff and the musicals, I don't think he ever gives her the heads up of, hey, I don't want you to remove my mask. That's not cool. Because then she usually just removes the mask, you know, because she's like curious what he looks like and stuff. So I'm glad here he mentions about it. That does not last long. And then he says that she's free as long as her love for him overcomes her fear. I find that as an interesting line. And I like that he signs with his actual name. It just says Eric at the bottom of it, instead of signing as like the Phantom, as if, you know, he can like be himself around her. Especially because he's in the room when she wakes up, and Christine wakes up really confused. You know, I would be too if I didn't remember whatever happened with the previous night, where you were basically in this like hypnotized state, and you wake up in this beautiful bed and you have no idea where the hell you are, or where all these shoes came from, or why there's like a dress in your room or anything. And then we actually get to hear the Phantom plays organ. It sounds very like haunting and sad. And then Christine looks really scared after reading his note, so I feel like the music matches pretty well. And then she's looking over his shoulder, and he's playing the Don Juan Triumphant music. That's like literally the name of the music written on the sheet music. And then he starts telling her about it and describing it. I think this is like the one conversation about music that they actually have, which I think is pretty neat. I feel like that never really happens. Like he always talks about Christine and her career and her music and his music, and whatever, but he never actually really sits down with her to talk about like music itself. It only lasts for like 2 lines though. And then she goes to take off his mask, and she's like very playful but kind of cautious with it, where her fingers kind of wiggle a little bit and her eyes go wide, like kind of like she's a child trying not to get caught. And it makes me sad though that she's already trying to take off his mask, because she literally had just read the letter in the previous scene warning about not touching the mask or whatever. Like, I understand she's curious, but like, he literally had the line written in there of like, you're not in any danger as long as you don't remove the mask, you know? I mean, it would be good if she just wasn't in danger in general, but you get what I mean. You know, he's like stating his boundaries of like, hey, don't touch my mask or anything. And she immediately just decides not to respect that, you know? And then she gets scared afterwards. I'm gonna say that's on her, honestly. But I like the music for that part. The music like kind of builds as she tries to take the mask, and it's like the notes are kind of just slowly going up a scale. It matches the tension perfectly. And then I think my favorite shot in this whole thing, or you know what, yeah, I'd say it is my favorite shot, is when she takes the mask off. It's great. It's like a jump scare, actually. It is a jump scare. It's a jump scare. We actually get to just full on see what Eric's face looks like, and I find that really interesting. Like, every movie or thing, I'll just say every adaptation. I feel like I keep saying every movie and the musical, and it's like, just say adaptation bubble. Every adaptation, I like, handles Eric's unmasking differently on like where in the point of the story does it take place, and how much of his face do you show, when do you show it, the angles and whatever. I always find that really interesting. That's always the thing I get the most curious about with these adaptations of like, what does his mask look like, and what does the makeup and everything look like when he's finally unmasked? Because like, as examples, like the 1991, you don't get to see Eric's face at all, and his unmasking is in like the middle of the story. And then with the Andrew Lloyd Webber ones, the musicals, it's like at the beginning. It's like the same time as this, but with those it's interesting where it's like his mask is removed, Christine gets to see his face, but we only see a little bit of the Phantom's face. We don't really get to see like the full makeup and anything, excuse me. And then at like the very end we get to see it, and it's like this big dramatic thing of like, you finally get to see his face as he's revealed to like everyone in the opera house, you know? And then with this, it's kind of like that first scene I mentioned where it's like Christine gets to see his face, and it's at the beginning of the story, except this time we, as soon as the mask comes off, we, the audience, get to see his full face immediately, the makeup and everything. Nothing about him is hidden. And it's really the only time you get like a very clear, I feel like, view of his face. But the reason I described it as a jump scare is like Lon Chaney looks directly into the camera, and it's treated as a jump scare more to the audience than to Christine, in that it's almost kind of scary, actually. Like, not specifically his face. His face does kind of look scary in other parts of the movie, though, if I'm honest. But that's the point. But it's like the way he stares, it's like super wide-eyed at the camera, as if he's surprised to see us more than Christine. And it's interesting because Christine is behind him. I think she can see like maybe the side of his head or the back of his head. If anything, she looks kind of surprised. And then when he finally turns around, then she's able to get the full look of his face, and she screams. But even just the way that shot looks is really cool. The way he just stares directly into the hold on, I'm trying to find it. Okay, I found it. Yeah, he makes this face where it's kind of like when your eyebrows go up and you get those forehead wrinkles and you're really surprised, your eyes go wide. It's that exact face, but it just feels so much more dramatic with the makeup and everything, where there's like these black circles around his eyes to resemble like the the sockets with the eyes glowing from within or whatever. I think it's basically supposed to be like that. And his nose is interesting where it's supposed to represent like not having a nose, where it's just these two giant nostrils at the bottom. And you know how your nose, it has that long part and then it rounds out. For the Phantom nose, it's basically like a triangle. It kind of looks kind of puffy to look like he doesn't have a nose. His teeth are kind of weird too, where he's just very toothy all the time and stuff. I don't really know how else to describe it. And his face is like very thin, you know, because he's supposed to look like skeletal and stuff. I do wish it looked a little more skeletal. I mean, it has like the basics of like what's supposed to be the empty sockets and the no nose. This is actually, I think, my favorite version I've seen of the Phantom's nose so far, where he actually just looks like he doesn't have a nose. And that's why I was listing those details about the mask, and I was saying like that gets explained later, where it's now it feels kind of sad, you know, when you see that he has no nose, and then his mask has like a sculpted on little nose on it, or like the painted on eyes, because he doesn't really kind of have eyes. And he has hair, which is interesting. It's I think black and not actually like gray or white for once, and he has like plenty of it, but it's coming out from like the middle of his head, like he's like balding. You can see his forehead and everything at all times, but I think it's really just that expression that and Lon Chaney makes these like very dramatic expressions and stuff when playing this character. I think it especially helps because the makeup around his eyes actually completely covers his eyebrows, so he basically has like no eyebrows or anything. So then when his eyes go wide, it's kind of freaky because you're missing that other feature, you know, like when you usually look at someone when they're startled and their eyebrows go up, you're missing that. All you get is the eyes, and like your face kind of like elongates when you make like a surprise face, like it's like your jaw kind of like drops and it like thins out your face. So having that expression in this moment makes it look like even more skeletal. It's just a really cool shot, the way he stares directly at the camera and everything. I don't know how to describe it. And then Christine's kind of funny, where she has this like slightly shocked expression. I think if you follow her line of sight, she could maybe see like the side of his head, because it's almost like he's making a scary face to the camera, because then his face relaxes. I think it's just, you know, because he's surprised because the mask came off and we're the ones seeing his expression. And then he gets up and he turns around, and then Christine screams and he points at her and wait, what does he say when he points to her? Oh yeah, and then you get a shot of him from further away, you know, now that he's turned around, and then he looks more like a skeleton at that point, especially with the eyes, because his eyes narrow. But it's like the way he opens his mouth, his teeth are visible at like all times, kind of like a skull. And he just stands there and points at her. He doesn't say anything, and then she slowly just kind of backs away from him. It's kind of a little funny, actually, and she like cowers in fear on the floor. She's like holding her hand out, and her hand shakes. And then it's kind of a little creepy when he like walks towards her, and it's her POV from the floor. So she's like looking up, and his head isn't looking down at her, but his eyes are. And you really get that view of his nose where it looks like, from that angle specifically, like he doesn't have a nose. It's the way he stares, and he gets like closer and closer to the camera, and it's like cutting between that and her being scared and stuff on the floor. It's great. It's so good, honestly. And then he like lifts his hands above his head, and they're like, there's a really cool shot I like where the camera's above both him and Christine, where she's like flopped over on the floor on her side, and you really get to see her dress and how ruffly and crumply it is. And then you see the back of the Phantom set. Oh, Okay, I just didn't know that. His hair is kind of like the monk bald's thing. Okay, because when you look at him from the front, you see that he has hair in the sides of his head and everything, but he has this like giant, just bald spot on the back of his head, and then there's hair coming from the sides and stuff. Wow, I didn't even notice that when I was watching the movie. That's interesting. Okay, because when he's in his disguise wearing the mask and stuff, he has this like little black felt hat thing that kind of covers his head, so he's covering that one specific spot. Okay, interesting. I'm glad I went back through and looked, because I thought his entire back of the head and everything and like the top of his head was like covered in hair, but he has this giant, it's like a giant circle of just like no hair. But yeah, then he covers his face in shame. Oh wait, no. I love the part when, okay, that shot that I mentioned where the camera's above, and then he, his hands are shaking, and he's like angry and also whatever, and then he, and he tells her like, look at my face. It's like, feast your eyes on this ugliness. And he actually grabs Christine's head. Actually, he grabs her hair and then almost looks like he's gonna like tear it off or something. He moves her head to force her to look at him. And he's like laughing at her and stuff. It feels almost like an evil moment. He looks like he's crazy. He looks like he's going to like about to strangle her or something. He's like maniacally laughing and everything as he's like holding her head with both of his hands. And yeah, the line is, feast your eyes, glut your soul on my accursed ugliness. It just works so well as like he's like laughing, but it's in this way of like, look how disgusting I am, you know. It's almost funny, but also kind of a little like, it's, you know, it's very tense. And he like covers his face in shame afterwards. And then the next shot, his face is like a little bit kind of covered in shadow, where you can't see his pupils, you just see the whites of his eyes. Kind of like the Dracula thing, but here the movie's back in like black and white again and stuff. And then it's kind of sad. She promises to be his slave and let her go if he loves her, and he's just like, okay, I'm gonna prove that I love you by letting you go, and you can go like sing and stuff. And it's interesting, he says like, you can return to your world and sing in the opera. The fact that he refers to it as your world specifically is kind of sad, of like that means he knows that he'll never be a part of it. It's not his world, like he's doomed to live down here forever, but you know, also by choice. But it kind of reminded me of like Beauty and the Beast, when the Beast lets Belle like go back to her father, of like, okay, you can, I like trust you enough, you can go and stuff. The only thing is she has to like promise not to see Raoul, and then she ends up breaking that promise. And then Eric, before she leaves, covers his face with his hand and goes to lean against a wall to sulk. It's like he's being so overdramatic, but he's like feeling the heartbreak and letting her go, that like I can only tease him about him a little bit. And then Christine gives a letter to Raoul saying like, hey, I know I said I didn't want to see you, I wouldn't see you again, but I need to see you, and that she's gonna be at the ball. So she's already like immediately gonna break her promise and stuff, which is kind of sad, because she's like on her hands and knees like begging for him to let her go and everything, because it's the, if you love me as you say, let me go, I promise to be your slave forever. And she breaks that immediately, where I kind of just stopped feeling bad for her. I just didn't really feel bad for her this much in this version or anything. And then one of the coolest things in this movie, and I had to Google about it, where I was like, is this edited in or something, is that there's color. Not just the purple, the piss yellow, the other stuff where it's one color covering the whole screen. No, like color as in like different colors, right? Regular ass color, like in movies. Yeah, that's a thing. It's for like 5 minutes. It's really cool. I looked it up. It's for some some of the title cards or text cards and for the masquerade scene, and apparently it was colored like that, or they allowed color on purpose. Apparently, you know, like color was really expensive back then. This movie's from 1925, again for reference. But they did that, I think, because of like how dramatic the scene is and stuff. And I think that's awesome, because if there's like any scene that deserves to be in color, I think it's that one, because you get to see what the opera house looks like in color, and it's beautiful. You can see all the detail. You get to see all the masquerade outfits and stuff, which I think totally deserve to be in color. And I think it's an interesting contrast if you think of it like vibe wise, where it's like, you know, the masquerade scene, it's supposed to be like colorful and fun and having these flashy outfits and everyone's partying and it's like woohoo, and it's kind of like a chill break between like Christine getting, you know, meeting the Phantom for the first time, and then afterwards he's like planning things, and it's like a little pause in the story. We get to have like fun for a bit, and it's interesting to compare it with like, you know, the rest of the movie, you know, would normally be in black and white and not all these other colors, you know, the purple, the yellow, whatever, so, and the black and white fits with everything else, where it's like, you know, this sad gothic story, and it really fits especially with the scenes of like the Phantom and the lair, and the fact that he wears only black, and the movie being in black and white makes it look even more like he's a silhouette, like he's a shadow, you know. But getting to see part of this movie in color is so cool, honestly, and getting to look at the outfits. I noticed a lot of the outfits, the costumes are red. I find that interesting. But there's just so many people running on screen, because again, there's like 5,000 people in this movie. But here's some of my favorite comments I made about the outfits, or the outfits in general. There's like 3 people that are dressed as clowns. There's this shot that I like. There's this woman, I didn't really care about her outfit, but she has this really long cape thing, and there's this part where she's in the middle of the stairs and she's walking up very slowly, and you really see the cape like follow her and everything. I think that's cool. There's this one woman that's in a pink, like kind of flapper looking dress, and there's this hat that goes in the back of her head that has like bunny ears on it or something. I thought that was pretty cute. But the music is so like bouncy and fun in this scene. It's being paired with the costume people running around made me think of like Christmas. It reminded me of the opening party scene in the Nutcracker, and the music with that and everything. It gave that vibe. It was really fun. And we get to see Christine's dress as well, and Christine wears this like fancy light pink outfit. It's kind of funny seeing that and thinking back to the 2004 musical movie, where she wears a dress that's like the same exact shade of pink too. It's kind of crazy. I do prefer the dress in that movie though than in this. It's funny thinking about, because like with the ALW stage musical, she has a completely different dress where it has all these little stars, and I absolutely hate the colors. I actually really don't like that dress. But I like the pink dresses here and such. I just don't like, and the dress is such a pretty color. It's like this very light pink. I just don't like the, like, there's not like sleeves, but there's this part at like the elbow where it's like this extra fabric that reminds me of like the tulle on like ballerina dresses, but it like props out in this like sort of sun shape. I don't like it. But her accessories and stuff are very pretty. Christine has this like sort of pearl headband, I think matching earrings if I remember correctly. I really like her hairstyles in this movie too, where sometimes it's down, sometimes it's like pinned up and stuff. And then she has this black mask that's held up to her face. She has to hold it in her hand, and it doesn't have like a stick or anything, but it's black, and it has this like veil material at the bottom. And you get to see Raoul, and they wear like matching style of masks. I think that's kind of cute. Okay, there's some more I want to talk about with the color. We're getting to one of my favorite parts in the whole thing that I was like freaking out about, but I need to just take like a quick pause. Okay, I can continue. I just needed to get up for a minute and kind of like stretch a little bit. Okay, and then there's this faraway shot of the interior of the opera house where everyone's running around. It's so cool, honestly, and it's so crazy to see like a movie or something you're watching in black and white, or you're used to watching in black and white, and then suddenly there's color, and it's always crazy. Like I still remember watching Doctor Who and watching the last episode that was in black and white, and then the next one with the third Doctor was in color, and it was like mind blowing. But just that feeling of going from black and white and color, especially within like the same movie and everything. There's something about like seeing older stuff like this, you know, because this is from the 20s in color, that just somehow makes it look like it's more real. Like in black and white, I think just you associate that with like old-timey movies and things, and you know, we see the world, of course, like, you know, the world's in color. I mean, okay, I think there is some kind of color blindness where like you do see things differently, or I don't know if there is one where you see things in black and white, but you know, the world is in color and stuff, and not being able to see that on film, I guess, makes it less realistic. You like forget about it, of like it's real and it's not. I mean, then again, black and white, watching movies in black and white does kind of make it feel like I'm more focused on the movie, or less of like, oh yeah, that's a real place and this is filming a movie, and it makes it feel more like it's a fantasy world. But yeah, the color makes it, for like older film like this, like in the 20s and stuff, more real. But it also just makes the building look so much more detailed. Like it makes it look like it's shot from a movie that could be from like the 30s and not even like the 20s. But yeah, it instantly just makes it not feel old anymore. I'm actually fine that the entire movie is in color and they just chose to do this one part, because that's kind of where it's used the strongest. Because, oh my gosh, the Red Death outfit, or whatever it's called, I think it's also called the Don Juan Triumphant outfit, but they don't really ever mention about Don Juan Triumphant except for early on in the movie when the Phantom's like playing music from it and his organ. So I'm gonna call it the Red Death outfit. It looks so fucking cool here. Oh my gosh, it's so extra, just like with the stage musical. Big black hat, stupidly long like feather boa thing coming out of it, and these long red robes, and this like twisted kind of wooden cane thing. Hold on, I actually took screenshots. I had to be careful with my screenshots. I used to take screenshots of things on Tubi to like send to people, and then for some reason it always showed up as like a black screen. I never understood why, but the screenshots were working. I didn't have them in like full screen as like a just in case. Oh my gosh, yeah, I love it. I love the little skull on his cane thing. It looks really cool. Oh no, it's like a black staff, and then it has this like, oh, it's a freaking snake. Okay, the cane is like a little skull on the top, the part where you hold it with your hand, and then it's just like a black staff on the bottom, and then there's a snake that is, it looks like it's made out of like jade or something, and it's around the mouth of the skull, and it twirls around the cane. That is badass. I want that thing. That's so cool. And it's like the more themes of deaths and whatever. I kind of wish the Phantom had gloves, actually. It's like the one time you get to see his hands and stuff. I feel like gloves would have looked cool with this outfit, because everything else with him is like covered, and he has this like little white collar peeking out from the jacket, and there's like these long red robes of various fabric, and then there's like this bandana that's around the top of his head. But oh my gosh, the skull mask, it's so freaking cool. It takes up the entirety of Eric's face. I love the eyes, nose, and mouth with it. I have to look at the screenshot and describe it to you, even though I wrote it in my notes. So detail took me a while to notice, and I feel like I wouldn't have noticed if this wasn't in color. Because the mask of the skull, it has a hole in it in the middle. And it's a hole for his nose. His nose is actually gray, and you see the little nostrils, which does confirm like his nose, not having a nose and having his face look skeletal, I guess looks so much like a skull that he didn't even need it covered. I mean, also he does need the ability to breathe, because there's nowhere for them in the mouth for it to go. but his regular nose is so realistic as like not looking like a skull that he can just cut a hole in his mask and pop his actual nose through, and it fits in perfectly with the costume. That's so cool, but it's also so sad. And then the mouth is interesting. The teeth, at first I thought those were his teeth, and then I realized they didn't move. It's like fake teeth that are like part of the mask that are together constantly, that just looks like he's gritting his teeth. What I do kind of miss, I love the skull mask. It's like my favorite out of any of the versions I've seen for this costume, is with the musical, the mask is split into two parts, so when the actor opens and closes his mouth, it's like the skull, as if the skull is also talking, and they don't have that here. But you know what? I'm fine with the teeth. It actually makes the mask look creepier, and they look like realistic teeth too. But what's crazy to me is the eyes, is that they're like carved in, so they look like the actual empty sockets of a skull, and there are teeny tiny holes in that mask for the actor's eyes. And it's kind of interesting because with the left eye you can see the actor's eyes, but you don't see the whole thing. You see like a little bit of the whites and the pupil, and then with the other eye it looks like there's something like red coming out of it. I can't tell what it is, but it's crazy because like if you're not really paying attention to the eye thing or whatever, it does just look like empty sockets, and then the nose and the mouth, like his freaking head looks like a skull. It's crazy. It's so realistic, and I love the like exaggerated features in a sense of the skull, of like the bone structure around the eye and like the cheek part, and then it goes down. I think the one thing I don't like is the jaw part of it. For some reason it's like a straight line underneath the jaw, even though it's supposed to, you know, with like a skull, it's supposed to like curve down and be round. I get that it's a mask, so it has to like cover his entire head. That's like one of the only things that ruins it for me. And I think the color is like a little off as well. Like if you look at the skull on his cane, which is also like a good reference for me right now to compare it to like an actual skull, you know, it's like this off-white color, but then with his skull mask it's kind of gray. It almost looks like it's like a tint of green, but that could be because the colorization here. But that is the coolest freaking skull mask I've ever seen in general, but also for this character, for this specific costume and stuff. Man, it's epic. I mean, I think it also helps with like his mouth being covered, in that, you know, the actor doesn't actually speak, you don't hear anything, so I think he can get away with having his mouth being completely covered and such. But man, that was one of the best things in this movie. I'm so glad I never stumbled on like a picture of it or anything. I never really looked up pictures of anything from this movie, except, you know, I'd seen already what the Phantom's face looked like. I didn't really remember it 100% clearly. But yeah, that's, I needed to talk about that skull mask. It's so fucking cool. And then the music for that part is interesting. When Eric arrives at the party, he's like the top of the stairs and he's walking down, and then when he gets to the end of the stairs, all of the people at the party, you know, because there's like a bajillion people in that party, they're actually scooting out of the way to the sides. They're like giving him his own space. And the funny thing is, Christine isn't even there. I mean, Christine's at the party, but she's like she's like up the stairs somewhere. He hasn't even seen her at this point. He just showed up completely extra with that outfit. He knew the assignment the others didn't even know existed, threatens everybody, and then leaves. I don't think he even talks about Christine, if I remember right. And then there's like organ that plays briefly, like right after he shows up. And then the music's really cool. It turns into like some kind of march. I think it was honestly one of my favorite tracks out of everything in this. Hold on, I have like several notes about the costume. But yeah, the music goes hard. And it's funny because like the Phantom leaves and the final note of that song just blares out really loud, and then it goes back to like the happy party music, and we're back to Christine and Raoul again, and they're running around to hide, and then they go on the roof, and then that part's really cool too. There's this freaking huge statue of these three angels that is up there. Looks really cool, and the movie is like technically still in color for this portion. It's kind of weird, I'll describe it, but there's a shot I really like of like the statues, the main focus, and Raoul and Christine are going around it, and they're really tiny, and then it goes to their perspective and they're talking for a bit. Christine vents about the Phantom and refers to him as a monster and stuff, and she's the one that comes up with the plan of like Raoul taking her away and all that after the performance. And it's interesting because like it's in blue, but then the Phantom is in color. Like you still see the red in his outfit, but it's kind of crazy because he's sitting up on the sculpture and he's like actually sitting up there and everything, which looks pretty damn high, but then his cape is flowing in the wind, which looks really cool, honestly. And that's where the poster comes from. Yeah, of him being up there and then Raoul and Christine on the bottom. I just wish that the full statue was here. I don't think that's also what the statue looked like, but this poster on screen is like the exact scene that I'm talking about of the rooftop and everything. But yeah, Christine vents to Raoul, and then the Phantom. It's kind of funny watching his reaction. I feel bad making fun of it though. It's like funny and sad seeing his reaction where he like falls back in shock onto the like leaning back onto the statue, and then he covers his face, but then he sits back up, and he's making these like claw hand sort of motions forward. At first I didn't know like to interpret it of like he's reaching for, it's like towards Christine or just towards anything, but it's not in a way where it looks like he's reaching for Christine, which would have I think been better, because like he reacts this way because he sees Raoul kiss Christine on the forehead. They don't have a big kiss or anything in this. It's just he kisses her on the shoulder, he kisses on the forehead, he gives her a tight hug. He never kisses her on the mouth. I don't think he ever kisses her on the mouth in this. I don't think anyone does that in this. She doesn't kiss the Phantom in this either. It's just with Raoul. It's more of like Raoul's kind of the main love interest, and and the Phantom is of course in love with Christine, but Christine is like definitely not in love with him in like any form, I think, in this. She doesn't even really seem to show sympathy for him, like I mentioned. But yeah, he's making these gestures, and I think she sees him, and that's kind of about it. And then the music stops being in color, and then it goes back to piss yellow. And then we get this document on Eric that's kind of interesting, where it describes a bit of his backstory, but the part that got my attention was it says he was exiled to a place called Devil's Island for the criminally insane, and that he's escaped. So he's like actually, like in other stories I've seen, it's like he's always lived at the opera house. It's all he's known. Sometimes he escapes from a circus. Sometimes it's like he traveled the world and then eventually got to the opera house. But here it's that he escaped this place, so he's like a criminal on the run that hides out under this opera house, and he's like deciding to stay there and stuff. And then Christine cries because she's scared. She knows the Phantom knows her plan to leave, and then there's this part where Raoul like gently touches the side of her face. I think it's to wipe her cheeks. He doesn't really make this like wiping motion though. It just kind of looks like he pokes her tears on each side of her face, but you know, the gesture is there, sort of cute. And then the Phantom hangs someone. I think it's what's his name, Joseph Baku. And you don't see the physical body. Again, it's more shadow stuff. You see just this huge shadow, and I mean huge, like bigger than the other. The people, sorry, it's almost 1 a.m. right now. It's 12:42. The yawns. I'm feeling it as I'm talking. There's a huge shadow of a corpse swinging on the wall. It makes it more ominous. I'm noticing I'm finding that more ominous just in general with like horror movies and other things, of like rather than seeing the body or the kill, if you see like a shadow of something or you hear a noise or just the idea of implying the danger but not seeing it, like with Candyman as an example, where you don't see him kill people at first, you just see the aftermath. You see the bodies covered in blood, where you can like, it's like left to your imagination. It's kind of like that with this, but instead of with bodies, it's like shadows of like the Phantom or the people he kills, or like the next thing that happens is like the Phantom kills a guy, and the person is like dragged down into this like trapdoor thing, and you see a shadow move from above, but I think it's just a guy being stabbed to death. And then Christine books it as soon as she knows the Phantom's coming. And then it goes into like the final layer stuff. The exploring the catacombs. Let's see. We get the raise your hands, the level of your eyes thing, which I explained about like the Phantom being quick with his noose. It finally gets like actually the full thing written out of why you have to, or I shouldn't say finally, this came before the musical and stuff, but you know, because there's always just like raise your hand to the level of your eyes, but they don't tell you like why. But here it's to avoid the noose, and they do avoid the noose, which is awesome. They do keep the hands to the level of their eyes. I'm proud of them. Raoul and the secret policeman, who is revealed as the police at this point, and then I'm glad that Eric calls out Christine, because at this point the rest of the story is trying to rescue her. It's kind of a bummer. This is like when the action starts and I was kind of just losing steam with watching this. Eric calls out Christine for two things: for being ungrateful and because she lied to him, and I semi-agree with these points. I think wanting her to love him in exchange for learning music, and the fact that she chooses not to love him and he views that ungrateful is bad. She doesn't owe you romance for you being nice to her. But the second point that he makes about her lying to him, I'm glad she called him out, because that's true. She betrays his trust multiple times. I mean, okay, the thing about, like, you can't talk to Raoul again, and then she does, I'm like, oh, okay. You can't, like, bar someone from, you know, if you're in a romantic relationship and you're like, you know, they're not, but I'm using that as an example, and you're like, you can't hang out with other people, you can only hang out with me, or like, you can't hang out with other guys. That always sounds like kind of scummy. Like, I had a friend that was in a relationship like that where her boyfriend didn't like it when she hung out with other people, even if it wasn't just other like dudes or whatever, and that was always seemed kind of weird to me. Like let your significant other have friends. You don't own them, you know. But that's how the Phantom acts here. But I think for me it's also like she looked at his mask when she didn't want to, but the lying thing is supposed to be calling out like, hey, you went to go hang out with Raoul, you're not supposed to talk to him again and stuff. But I mean, I get it, you know, she's also like terrified of the Phantom at this point. She needed to like tell someone about it and her plan to like to get to safety. Their plan was to run away to England, actually. And it's interesting, like I mentioned, Eric treating himself, how he treats himself, like when he originally talked to Christine, it's the best description I can think of is like talking to her as if he's already dead, you know, treating himself like a corpse. He sleeps in a coffin, you know, he dooms himself to live in the shadows forever. But then after she betrays him, he has this line he says about how he's a human like any other man, and he deserves his shot at happiness or something along those lines. Where I'm like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, you don't completely view yourself as like as if you're like dead. You have some things in your life you want to fight for, that you are a person with rights, you do deserve happiness, just not like the murdering people thing as a way to get your happiness, you know. And then the rest of it is like Eric going after the intruders. At this point, Raul and the police guy, they're together. They're trying to find the Phantom. They're trying to find Christine. They're not even really trying to hunt down the Phantom. They just want to rescue Christine. And then Raul's brother's also there. He follows Raul. There's a part, like I mentioned, where the Phantom actually goes underwater and pulls them out from like a boat, which I thought was kind of cool. I just like the idea of the Phantom hunting people down in there. He even has this little reed thing or whatever that he like breathes through, so he like completely submerges himself underwater to stay hidden. It made me almost wish at this point, I guess because I'm thinking of sorry, once I get too tired, once it's like 1 a.m. when I'm like recording these sometimes, and I can feel the tiredness approaching as I was talking through the whole hour of midnight. But now I'm at the point where like I'm stumbling through my words and my brain's my thought process is leaving. I have one more page of notes though. I swear we're almost done. Because I was thinking of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, you know, the big face reveal of like seeing the Phantom's face during the whole like the point of no return, and the tension of that musical of like Raul, Christine, and the Phantom confrontation, but not having that here. It's kind of a similar thing where like Christine is like talking to the Phantom and begging to be let go and wanting Raul to save her, and Raul trying to find her and the Phantom messing with him, but it just does not have that tension of everyone sing-songing. It's arguing with each other or anything, or like the 1990 movie where Eric's being like hunted down by the police on top of the rooftop. This does not have the same tension, and I wasn't really interested in it at first, except for one specific part. You'd think anyway, with all this action, it would be more interesting. But yeah, it almost made me wish the face reveal was here at the end instead of at the beginning, because like it was cool. It was an interesting surprise seeing the Phantom's face from the very start, but then that takes away like the big thing in the movie of like you wonder about his face. I wish they kept us in the dark with that a bit longer, even towards the end or something. There's a part, it is time for Virtual Boy Red, where the Phantom turns up the heat literally in this mirror room thing that Raul and the police guy are trapped in, and that's when the screen turns red. I wrote in my note, it says it's like it turned into the fucking Virtual Boy, but only for that one room, because it cuts back to Christine in the Phantom's like living room, and those parts are in black and white. At this point the movie is in black and white, but it's that one specific room that's red because it's now heated up. I think that's pretty clever. You know what, it doesn't just remind me of the Virtual Boy, it reminds me of like lamps for some reason. I'm thinking of like heat lamps and things. I guess those are more like yellow. No, it is here, let me go back to it real quick. I have it in the other tab. Where are you? Yeah, it is exactly like Virtual Boy Red, so it is not pleasant on the eyes at all. Thankfully it's just that one room and that like one scene of them being in there, and then once they escape the movie goes back to normal. You know, one thing that bothers me with this, and I didn't notice with some of the other silent movies I watched, where the actors are like clearly saying stuff and it's like multiple words, but the text on screen thing doesn't appear to like quote unquote translate what they're saying. Like, you can guess what they're trying to say, and they make facial expressions, they make faces, but like, dude, I want all the dialogue to this movie. I want to know what they're saying, especially because the other characters are reacting to it, and it's like, what is it, you know? and like their lips are clearly moving and they're saying something. What did make me interested again was, yeah, the heat room, and then Christine is on her knees begging to the Phantom to save Raoul, and he does. And then the Phantom looks down at her with this like maniacal grin on his face, like he's enjoying torturing everybody. It's just so fun to watch. And at this point he stopped wearing his mask, so you can see his expressions better. What's interesting though is he has the masks on before this, like when he's around Christine, and when he's kind of looking for the people in the lair and goes underwater, he takes the mask off. Oh, duh, no wonder he takes the mask off. He has to go underwater. I didn't realize that. I thought he was just trying to scare his opponents. And then Raoul is saved by the Phantom, and there's this one part where Christine is holding him. It's like more of a close-up, and she looks so gentle and sweet, and she has tears in her eyes of like cradling Raoul in her arms. And then the mob comes, and Eric drags Christine away, and we get a march again as the music, but it's like a different one from the masquerade scene. And then I'm bummed that the last like 5 minutes of this ending of this movie is purple, which we haven't seen purple since the title screen. It hasn't popped up anywhere else, because the purple is like the darkest color out of all the colors, and it makes it really, really hard to see. And it's like, this is the end of the movie. The end of the movie is actually really freaking cool. This is probably where the 5,000 people, the extras, came from. Okay, because Eric ends up dragging Christine out of the opera house. They get into a carriage to escape this huge ass mob. I swear, with the amount of people in it, it's like every freaking person in Paris is looking for these two. But yeah, they go in a carriage. It's driven by a horse, not the horse from earlier, unfortunately. I don't know if that horse ever gets to see the light of the day. And then it's interesting, Christine actually, they're making a turn, falls out of the carriage, and then the carriage flips and the Phantom runs out of it to go and help her, but then he sees the approaching mob and he's forced to flee. So it's not like he's leaving Christine by choice, but it's kind of funny. And then the ending's a little confusing, again, because it's purple, where Eric is like cornered by the mob and they're by the water, and I didn't know if Eric decided to jump in or if he was pushed in, but you do not see him resurface in the movie ends, so I'm assuming he drowns. I was kind of wondering if the mob was gonna like catch him and just get him arrested or something, but I'm interpreting it as he dies. I'm not clear on that though. But it's interesting with like, you know, the way he leaves Christine, of like leaving her there on the floor and then that's it. And then he like supposedly drowns or whatever. They never interact again. They don't say goodbye. Nothing happens, you know. That's just crazy to me, because like he kidnapped her, and Raoul and everybody else went down in this lair and all this other stuff, and then he doesn't even let her go. He probably was never going to let her go. Instead, it's just she falls out and he's like forced to abandon her, and that's it. It's realistic. I'm glad that's not like the mob chasing the carriage thing is really cool, but I'm glad this part of it, of like Christine being abandoned and such, isn't like a thing in other stuff. Like, I guess the closest I can compare it is the 1990 movie, where he is, but that one is like he's cornered by the police, he's on the roof, and Eric chooses suicide but then dies in Christine's arms, is the big thing. Where with the other things I've seen of this musical, where it's like they're together at the end, I guess, or they have some kind of last goodbye. I still have a soft spot with like the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, where they're in the lair and Christine kisses the Phantom and gives him back a ring, and then comes back later to give him back a ring, and then she leaves for the final time. But here they have no goodbye or anything. He's just forced to abandon her. It's not even portrayed as sad, because there's like so much happening, the action has to like keep moving and stuff, but it ends up kind of I guess a bit abruptly, in a sense of like he ends up in the water, you don't see anything, and that's it. That's the whole thing. But yeah, 10 out of 10 movie. This is peak. I wish I watched this sooner, honestly. Out of the Phantom of the Opera movies I've seen, which are this one, the Charles Dance 1991, which I'd say, I think that's still my favorite, actually. I've seen Phantom of Paradise, which is from the 80s, and the 2004 Andrew Lloyd Webber movie. Okay. Yeah, the 1991, I think character-wise, it's like very different from the others, but I think it's my favorite. I really like how Christine and the Phantom are in that. I think aesthetic-wise, the 2004 movie is my favorite. I think music-wise or so, like performance-wise and stuff, Phantom of Paradise, the music in Phantom of Paradise is so good, honestly. And then but no, okay. I was trying to remember, I was gonna say something about Phantom of Paradise, but I couldn't remember if I did a review on it. I don't think I'm gonna do a review on it, but I do want to say it's pretty dang good. Has some banger songs. I've listened to it before, and I like that it like feels very 80s but also feels very modern, and has a really interesting like phantom design where the mask looks like a bird. A lot of like bird imagery, but it's also metal and it looks like a big 80s helmet. This one, I think, just vibe wise and everything, it's really cool. I think easily has like my favorite makeup and such, not just for the Phantom but like for the other characters. I really like Christine's makeup. There's so many cool bits in this. Easily my favorite Phantom makeup, where he actually looks completely skeletal. I mean, I do like with some of the other ones, the implications of looking like a skeleton are there. Like I was just talking about this with my friend, but with the Andrew Lloyd Webber stage one, besides I like the little detail of there's like cracks in the Phantom's face, like the skull, but the fact that there's like a pink thing on the side of his head and it's surrounded by white, and you think, oh, what can that be? It's his brain. It's his brain coming out of his skull. I was talking about that with my friend, and my friend was like, that's crazy. And I'm like, I know, right? It's kind of sad and horrifying when you think about it. Like, no wonder he has to wear a wig in that version, the Phantom himself, not just like the actors playing him. But so I kind of wish he did have that, because that's my one like I guess sort of complaint with the makeup in this, is that, you know, everything else is good. The nose is perfect. It's my favorite nose. The eyes having the like black circle, I wish they were like a little more visible, but it's good, especially from like far away. It looks like the black circles, and you see the eyes kind of shine through, and the nose is skeletal, and just bearing those teeth, man, that adds to the horrors. I wish he had a little bit less hair. I like with some of the musicals where he has like just a couple of like strands. I don't care what color it's in, but making it kind of more wispy. I don't know how old he's supposed to be in this. I mean, I'm assuming he just looks like a skeleton, you know. Actually, I do like with the musical that some of the strands are white, like he's like old, but then it also makes the romance with like Christine creepy for like the age gap thing, not just the fact that he is like too possessive of her, you know. It's just the cheeks look kind of too normal to me, and same with the big forehead. I wish there was like cracks or something, but very cool, very iconic look for the fans. I'm just gonna keep thinking about that like the rest of the night, you know, until I like pass out or whatever. But this is a 10 out of 10 movie. I think vibe wise and everything, this is my favorite. This is my new favorite of the Phantom movies. This was just so good. I don't even really know what else to say about it, honestly. But yeah, I wish I watched this sooner. I wish, I don't even know if I want to say I wish I watched this before the 2004 1990 movie, because all three of them, actually all four of the movies I've mentioned, you know, including Phantom Paradise, are like so different from each other, both like aesthetic wise and the way it follows like the story and adapting the story is all like completely different, where there's like a gothic musical, there's like a very 80s one that kind of feels more focused on like the music itself, and the Phantom having like a completely different backstory and getting like see him a bunch before. It's about him getting his music stolen by like a record producer or something. And then this one is probably the one that's closest to the novel, but I haven't read the novel. I do want to. That's my last thing with watching all this. Like, I've watched all this Phantom stuff. I'm like going backwards. I went from like 2004 movie, stage musical. I had already watched Phantom of Paradise, actually. I watched it like a while ago. This, and then the novel. I'll have to eventually do everything in the right order, you know. But yeah, that I just have to read the novel, and that's it. I don't know how long it is though. I don't know when I'll do it or when you'll get a review. But the timing of all this, of getting back into Phantom of the Opera, worked out great for me because it like goes with Halloween, and also the timing of it of watching all these other silent movies, or just like monster movies, I guess. I'd watched like Creature of the Black Lagoon, Nosferatu, Dracula, Phantom of the Opera. Last one I need is Frankenstein. I have to wait on Frankenstein a little. I don't have to. You know what? Oh, shit. Oh, perfect. It's exactly like 2 weeks at the time I'm recording this until Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein ends up on Netflix, which I cannot freaking find this thing in theaters, and it's killing me inside. So I might have to watch it on Netflix. I'll have to live through that, I guess. But I think I can finally watch the original Frankenstein. I don't want to watch it too close, because sometimes if I watch the original of something and then I watch like the new one, I'm like constantly comparing it while I'm watching the new one, and then I can't enjoy it for how it is, especially if it's like my first viewing of it, and then it's kind of like ruined for me, that viewing. So I think watching Frankenstein 2 weeks ahead of time is a good amount of time. All right, so that'll be the next of the, actually I don't think Frankenstein's a silent movie, but that's like the next of like the old monster movies basically. But yeah, this was fantastic. I recommend watching it. I don't have a recommendation on which version to watch. I mean, if you're gonna watch it on Tubi, I think it's on Hulu as well. I'm not completely sure. There's two versions. I don't know what it's like watching it entirely in black and white, but you know what? I was fine with the color version. It was kind of interesting, if anything. It would probably be better to watch completely in black and white, then the colors are more consistent. It'd be easier to see. But the Virtual Boy red for the fire thing was kind of cool. And I did kind of like that the rose pink color shows up when the Phantom and Christine first meet, and then when she's like mostly in his lair, it's like black and white. But do find a version of this movie that, I mean, I'm assuming it has to be every version because it was like made for the movie, where you get to see the masquerade scene in color, because like holy shit, it looks amazing. You need to see that Red Death costume with the skull in full color. It's so fucking cool. Okay, I'm gonna go to bed. It's 1:06 right now. I'm done with my notes. I'm very sleepy. But yeah, this is peak. Go find somewhere to watch it. I don't know how long it's on Tubi. That's just where I happen to watch it. You know, that's where I go for a lot of these older movies. Again, this is not a Tubi ad. Okay, I'm rambling. Yeah, I'm never like sponsored or anything by anyone or the streaming services. I just like to mention them when I remember, as like a, hey, if it's still here by the time this gets posted, you know, there's a place you can watch it and stuff. All right, bye bye.